Hello everyone and welcome to the 17th episode of my GTA Online Racing series, and at the end of the last episode I did say what we were going to be talking about in this one. So I did say that I'd kind of missed out a key point of the car's performances and what goes towards making a car do what it does, in that it's to do with the drivetrains of the cars. So front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, things like that. And the reason I missed it out in that video is because it is a very important part of the car. It's quite a big part of the car, and it does have an interesting kind of separator when you look at them just based on kind of what their drivetrains are. You do see a big difference start to emerge, and you see why some cars are perhaps quicker than others. So yeah, that's going to be the topic of conversation in this video. There's going to be a few different races as well. I'll talk about those, I'll kind of intimately talk about those as we go through. This one I get hit off at some point, I think, and I have to do a little bit of a comeback. It's quite a good race. So yeah, I'll get straight into it with the drivetrains of the cars. Now I'm using the same handling file that I did in the last episode, so I'll put the link to that in the description below, but I'm not going to focus on any of the other aspects. We talked about those already. I'm just going to be focusing on the drivetrains, and we're going to start with front wheel drive cars because frankly it's the smallest one. There aren't very many front wheel drive cars. It's definitely the smallest drivetrain out there essentially, and you know there's a few there that are, you know, vans and planes. Obviously planes are kind of a funny one, you don't really want to consider those. There's two sedans that are front wheel drive, the Acia and the Ingot. There's one utility vehicle, but you know there's a few different things there that are front wheel drive, but the main ones are the compact cars. Now all of the compact cars, all four of them, are front wheel drive, and that is basically the only real way that a front wheel drive car is going to be at the top of a leaderboard. So the Blister, the Issy, the Dilettante and the Prairie are all front wheel drive cars. Obviously the Blister is the quickest of those, and it's probably the quickest front wheel drive car that there is as well. But yeah, you know, front wheel drive isn't used very much. It's only really plays a factor in the compact class. But if you want the quickest front wheel drive car, if you do like driving front wheel drive cars, the compacts are the ones that you need to be using a lot more. So yeah, that's the front wheel drive cars all done, because there's not really a lot to them. And really the interesting ones are the rear wheel drive and the all wheel drive, which we'll come on to next. So we'll start with the rear wheel drive cars, and this is easily the biggest class. The vast majority of cars on GTA are rear wheel drive, and it's just how it is really. You know, all of the coupes, all but one of the muscle cars, the vast majority of sports and supercars are rear wheel drive. All of the motorbikes are obviously rear wheel drive. Most of the off-road cars, all of the sedans apart from a few. You know, pretty much if you see a car in the street, chances are it's going to be rear wheel drive. All of the sports classics are also rear wheel drive. So yeah, you know, this is easily the biggest class, if you like. And it's interesting that probably the quickest rear wheel drive car, if we discount motorbikes, because you know motorbikes are just in a class of their own. The quickest rear wheel drive car is probably the Cheetah. Now that's an interesting one, and it might give you a clue as to what kind of drivetrains the other cars have. But yeah, I mean there's only 4 supercars that are rear wheel drive, which is the Bullet, the Cheetah, the Vaca and the Voltic. And in terms of sports cars, the vast majority of sports cars are actually rear wheel drive. I would say, looking at this list, it seems like the Feltzer is probably going to be the quickest rear wheel drive sports car out of those. You know, there is the Comet, the Corvette, the Carbonizer in there, but really the Feltzer can kind of match what the 9F can do and gets reasonably close to the Elegy. So the Feltzer is probably the quickest rear wheel drive sports car. But yeah, you know, rear wheel drive is everywhere basically. It's all over the place. I'll just stop a second to just give you a little bit of a talking point about this video. So this first race is the first race that I've ever done on this track. And basically this was, so as you can see there, new fastest lap for a terrible lap. I'd never raced this track before, and I was having an awful night on the game. I mean, I was losing all the time. I wasn't having a very good night. I think I was really tired, you know, nothing was going right. And it didn't help that I was on a track now that I just didn't know, on bikes, getting hit off all of the time, hitting things, slowing down. It was such a pain, you know, I mean, that kind of thing, it was horrible. So yeah, I mean, this track got voted again, and you know, this was only the second time that I played it, so the next 2 laps that you see are only the second and the third and fourth laps that I've ever raced on this track. But because I was having such a horrible night, this was kind of a turning point. I just thought, no, screw it, I'm sick of doing so badly. I'm just gonna concentrate now and have a decent race. And I do have a decent race in this second one, and you'll see how it turns out. But if you compare the lap times from the first race to the lap time in the second race, you'll see a huge difference. And you know, you got to remember, this is still only the fourth. The lap time that I got my best lap here on is still only the 4th lap I've ever done on this track. So yeah, you know, I came through on this one, and I was happy about that. But it was certainly a bit difficult in the first place. And the race after this, just to tell you about that, I've put it in because it's something that I really love. I really love when you put it on current weather conditions. It starts off dry and then it starts to rain. You know, that it just adds that extra level. It doesn't happen very often, but it adds that extra level of difficulty, and I really enjoy that sort of having to adapt to rain circumstances as it gets wetter and wetter, and that's what you'll see during the race. So yeah, I've just left that in, but back to the main topic here. So yeah, rear wheel drive is everywhere, and there are a lot of very quick cars, a lot of class winning cars in there. Rear wheel drive is one of the quickest classes in terms of the cars that are available to it. But hands down, the winner for the quickest class in terms of drivetrains, in terms of cars as well, is all-wheel drive. Now, just to get this out of the way, there are all of the SUVs are all-wheel drive. Obviously, they're not going to be setting any crazy records. There's one muscle car, which is the Picador, that's all-wheel drive, and there's a few off-road vehicles, which also, funnily enough, aren't some of the quicker ones. But the main interesting ones are the sports cars and the supercars that are all-wheel drive. Now, there's only 6 of those. There's 3 supercars that are all-wheel drive and 3 sports cars, and you would have to argue that they are the fastest cars in the game. So, first of all, you've got the Entity, that's self-explanatory. The Adder, again, very quick, and the Infernus. Those are the 3 supercars that are all-wheel drive. And although I didn't test the Infernus fully modded, the fact that it's all-wheel drive and that it's very light, it's only 1,200 kilograms, would lead me to believe that it probably has a chance of overhauling the Cheetah. It could probably, fully modded, best the Cheetah, or at least get very close to it. So that's the power of all-wheel drive. So you've got pretty much the 3 fastest supercars are all-wheel drive. Now, sports cars, you've got the Elegy. Elegy is obviously easily the quickest sports car. Then you've got the 9F, which isn't too far off it either. And you've got the Sultan, is the other sports car. So I'll leave the Sultan for now and I'll come back to it. But the Elegy and the 9F are probably the two quickest sports cars. You know, there are a few rear-wheel drive sports cars like the Feltzer and possibly the Serrano that kind of match the 9F as well. But in terms of the absolute quickest sports car, the Elegy, it's an all-wheel drive car. Now, with all-wheel drive, you've got a sort of a different thing to go along with that, because you've got the bias, the drivetrain bias of these all-wheel drive cars. So this is basically how much power of the engine goes towards the front wheels and how much goes towards the rear wheels. Now, for all of the supercars, it's all of the same. 20% of the power goes to the front wheels, 80% of the power goes to the rear wheels, and this really helps with acceleration. It really helps with turning as well. It's why these all-wheel drive cars are so quick. You know, having that extra power come out of the front wheels, it really helps. So yeah, but the sports cars are a little bit different. So the 9F is the same as the supercars. 20% of the power goes to the front, 80% to the rear. The Elegy has it slightly different. 30% of the power goes to the front with the Elegy. Only 70% goes to the rear. That gives it a bit more of a balance in that regard, and it's probably one of the main reasons why it's so quick. Along with its traction, it has a nice balance between front and rear, power, drivetrain bias, and it's just so quick because of that. But then you come to the Sultan, and the Sultan has 40% of the power going to the front wheels, 60% going to the back wheels. It's one of the highest biases to the front wheels that exist on the game. There's a few SUVs that are 0.5, 0.6, but in terms of normal sports cars, supercars, it's easily the highest, 0.4, 40% going to the front wheels. And this is why the Sultan is so good off-road, because it's so balanced in terms of the power that it gives to the front and rear wheels. It's certainly not going to set any records on a track, but it is a very good car for off-road, a very good option. And it's not the fastest four-door car because that's the exemplar, but if you do plan to go off-road with it, so sort of you're taking your friends off-road, you want to get away from the police off-road, something like that, the Sultan could be a better option for you. It depends what you want to do with it. Although, you have also got the Granger, which is a four-wheel drive SUV that can fit 8 people. It all depends on what you want. So around a track, the Sultan isn't going to be the quickest, but off-road, it's certainly very good. And that's because of the way that the power is distributed over the wheels. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All-wheel drive is the king really in GTA. If you have an all-wheel drive car, you certainly could do a lot worse, and you do very well in races, for considering some of the all-wheel drive choices that we have in the entity and the elegy. And all-wheel drive is the quickest. It's pretty much the quickest class. In terms of drivetrains, all of the fastest cars are all-wheel drive. There are a few quick rear-wheel drives, but they're certainly not going to be anywhere near the all-wheel drive cars in terms of balance and traction and things like that. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video to sort of explore a little bit more about these cars, about how they do have differences above and beyond all of the things that I mentioned in the last episode, and obviously all of the things that I did mention in the last episode all go in with this as well. So all of these things play a part together as well. But yeah, front wheel drive are the slowest, aren't very many of them, certainly the smallest class. Rear wheel drive easily the biggest, very quick cars in there, very slow cars as well, and all wheel drive are kind of the kings really. If all wheel drive wins in every regard. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video guys. I hope it's given you a bit more of an insight into the different cars and what they kind of have going for them. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like, leave some comments down below, let me know what you think about all the cars. Thanks a lot for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.